and get us recording, and I'm gonna share my screen with everyone. Can everyone see this? See a slide that says Nonprofit Sabbatical Program? Great. Okay, well, thanks again so much to all of you for joining us this afternoon. We're really excited to be talking about the next cycle of this program with everyone. My name is Taryn Ford. I'm the Senior Director of Communications and External Influence here at the Colorado Health Foundation, and I've had the pleasure of being in a position where I've been developing this program alongside many colleagues and many people, really. And we're excited to be launching Cycle 2, so thanks for being with us today. I would like to introduce two of our other speakers that are going to be sharing some information with us today from our technical assistance team. Brian Kellaway from the Nonprofit Finance Fund and Carolyn Love from Kabaya Consulting. And we'll be hearing from them later in the presentation. I'm sure you all see that I've started recording, and we're going to make sure that we have this available on our website as an archive, so y'all will be able to access this at coloradohealth.org if you need to leave early today or you want to share it with colleagues or other people on your staff. And it looks like most people are muted, but if you can just double check and make sure that you are muted, that'll help us avoid background noise and just make sure that we don't have interruptions. And as far as questions go, I'm going to spend maybe about 25-30 minutes just walking through the program overview, and then we'll spend the rest of the hour taking your questions. We're going to take as many of them as we can. So I would invite you all to just share those in the chat throughout the course of the presentation. You can also save them and send them when we get to the Q&A period, but we do have someone on our team, Carrie Jones, so you might see her face pop up here and there. She's going to be tracking those questions just to make sure that we can answer all of them when we get to that point in the presentation. So, and I will also note that we do, if you haven't visited our website at coloradohealth.org yet, we do have almost all the information that we're going to cover today is featured there as well. But we do have an FAQ that is available now. We'll be updating it based on questions that come in from today in case there are things that we've just overlooked. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the sabbatical program. So we're just excited and thrilled to have so many of you with us today. And again, just excited to be at this point where we're actually on cycle 2. I think probably as most of you know, the foundation launched this program in late 2019 based on a vision from our CEO, Karen McNeil-Miller, who may or may not be on here. I'm going to just do a quick peek. She was going to try and join us, and I'm not seeing her right now, but if she does join, or Karen, if you're on and I just don't see you, just feel free to interrupt me or throw something into the chat if you want to add context. But so taking Karen's vision for this, you know, we worked and did a lot of research with other foundations from across the country, looked at their sabbatical programs, and our program is based on those that have been really successful, but it does also offer some unique features, which we'll talk about today. And we wrapped up our first cycle actually later this summer, just a couple months ago. And we were just incredibly sort of astounded by the response that we had to the first cycle. And we also learned a lot. So we've made some adjustments to the program as a result of that learning. But our first cycle produced 20 really outstanding applications. And we recently announced a total of 4 grant awards as a result of that cycle. So as I mentioned, we made some adjustments to the program to improve it, thanks to feedback from applicants and folks in the community. And we also have adjusted certain expectations resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. And we recognize that the pandemic could in fact continue to affect this program and the outcomes of it. So we're really committed to making sure that all of you who are interested applicants are aware of any changes that might occur with the program. If anything, it could be just an extension of the deadline for applications, which right now is March 15th, 2021. So let's actually talk about what the program centers on and offers. We have 2 primary goals that we're working toward with the program. And first, we obviously want to recognize and reward long-term and respected nonprofit leaders in Colorado by giving them an opportunity to step away and rejuvenate themselves through sabbatical. And we certainly know that successfully leading a profit in today's world takes endless dedication, and especially just given what we've experienced in the last 8 or 9 months, we know it's pretty tough to step away for lots and lots of reasons. So we wanted to put this program in place to really help executive leaders on that front. The second goal really centers on this idea of us wanting to strengthen the overall recipient organization in a couple different ways. So the program gives other internal leaders an opportunity to step forward, to learn and strengthen that internal leadership bench within the organization during the sabbatical period. And we also want the entire staff to be able to benefit from capacity building opportunities that they desire and need. So let's just break down the program. So we've really divided the program up into kind of 4 core areas. So the sabbatical itself obviously is that opportunity for the grantee executive to take a hiatus for activities of their choice. And the sabbatical itself can be either 3 or 4 months in duration. And applicants can apply for up to $20,000 for sabbatical activities, as well as applicants are able to request between $25,000 to $50,000 to subsidize the current salary and benefits of the executive director. And ideally, the sabbatical will be taken within 18 months of receipt. That's our current kind of guideline in place. But again, depending on what happens with the pandemic, we'll be looking at that to make sure that folks have the flexibility that they need if it's necessary. The second core component of the program is one of the unique features. It's an executive-in-residence experience, which is a co-learning opportunity for the grantee executive and our staff to learn from one another. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute. The third core area is the grantee interim leadership needs. So applicants are eligible to apply for up to $10,000 to reward your interim leaders or maybe a leadership team that will be stepping in to run the organization while your executive director is on the sabbatical. And then the fourth core area is around grantee staff capacity building needs. So you are eligible to apply for up to $15,000 that goes toward employee directed staff capacity building. And those funds are available to be used for up to 2 years once you've been awarded those dollars. And so the total overall amount that you can apply for is up to $95,000. And our plan for next year is to award 3 sabbatical grants. So let's talk just a little bit about the sabbatical itself and the expectations for what that experience might be like for the executive director. We've really divided up the life cycle of the experience into 3 kind of milestones. So the first one is around the pre-sabbatical period, which we're in now. So on the application front, as I mentioned earlier, you have until March 15th, 2021 to submit an application. And our decision process that we use inside the house here takes a few months. It does include due diligence and interviews for final candidates. And we expect to make decisions in the later summer months of next year in 2021. So then once the grant is actually made, the foundation will host a brief welcome meeting for the grantees to get to know one another. We'll also publicly announce those grants, and we'll work with each of the grantees to do that in a way that makes sense for you and the community that you serve. And then we'll also be hosting a couple of different orientations that include an opportunity for you to get to know our technical assistance team if you haven't already engaged with them. And then the second orientation experience will really be to work directly with our CEO, Karen, in designing what the executive-in-residence experience might look like. That'll be done in cooperation with you. The second milestone is, of course, the sabbatical itself, and the nature of sabbatical activities are really up to the executive director, to those of you on this call and the organization that you work for. The foundation has no say or involvement in how you spend that time outside of the executive-in-residence portion. I will say, though, that we are looking for complete hiatus and consecutive uninterrupted leave. That does include, we recommend highly that there are no return visits for meetings or events, no phone and email, that you just completely sign off from all of that. And that we also recommend that you disengage from professional volunteer activities. And then finally, once the sabbatical is completed, we call this kind of the post-sabbatical period. One thing that we've learned from some of the other foundations in the sector that have these programs is that re-entry can be kind of tough. And so we actually advise a silent return, so staff can really view this period as a new stage of organizational evolution. And in terms of reporting on the overall experience, we're really trying to keep the reporting requirements informal and minimal. We'll be asking for some type of organizational report from you or from grantees around 6 weeks after return. And that can be a written report, that can be a phone call with us. We're really going to try and be flexible with that. And then finally, as we further institutionalize this program, we do want to stand up an alumni cohort. So we are hoping that everyone who participates would be involved in the cohort. So in terms of the Sabbatical Executive-in-Residence piece of the program, again, which is extremely unique, we don't know about any other programs that offer this, but it is also novel and experimental, I'll say. We will be co-designing this experience with the grantee. And one of the primary reasons for developing this aspect of the program is to really honor our community-informed cornerstone as an organization. It's just such a great way to invite executives into the foundation, to allow them to learn more about philanthropy and how we operate, for example. But it's also a great opportunity for us to receive feedback and hear insights from those folks who get to have that experience with us, to help us improve how we engage with the nonprofit sector. And so over these first couple of years, we're just going to learn as much as we can about what works about this, and we'll continue to tweak it and improve it over time. But here's the gist of how it's going to work. So this portion of the sabbatical will be 4 weeks long, or 1 month in duration. We do expect it will occur timing-wise, either on the front end or the back end of the sabbatical experience overall. And again, remember that can be either a 3 to 4 month period of time. And again, we'll be working with the executive director to determine an approach for the time period that is really mutually beneficial. Our CEO, Karen, again, will be co-designing that experience with you before the sabbatical starts. And then I and other members of the communications team will be your point of contact internally at the foundation during that time that you spend with us. And, you know, it may end up looking like you shadowing Karen as the executive director or with other executives that work at the foundation. It could mean that you spend time with different departments inside the house. It could be that you go out on the road with a program officer, assuming that we can travel again, hopefully in the nearer future than all of us would like. And so there's just a lot of different ways that we can think about what that experience might look like for you. We obviously would be asking that you would be residing in Denver during that period of time. And so for those of you who don't live in Denver, we would of course be making sure that you're compensated for lodging and transportation, food, stipends, all of that. So we would take care of all of that. I'm just going to pause and make sure we just have questions that we need to answer and that there's no tech issues. Looks like we're good. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the interim leadership piece of this grant. This is the third component of the grant. And again, there are dollars set aside in the grant to reward interim leaders, or a leadership team, if you will, who support the organization during the time that the executive director is out on sabbatical. So again, you're eligible to receive up to $10,000 for this piece of the grant. And this is, again, an aspect of the program that we've instituted because we believe it's an incredibly important opportunity to help build up your internal leadership bench. Now, I do want to take just a minute to talk a little bit about a new feature of this year's application that applies to this. So we've designed really simple templates for both the interim leadership plan and the capacity building plan, which I'll talk about in just a moment. These templates are now included as part of the application, and we learned that providing a template of this nature could really help support you as an applicant in considering thoroughly the impact of how this grant could affect your organization. So we do hope that it's helpful. I will say that what we're looking for in the interim leadership plan is one that does require that you rely on current staff, not contractors or other external parties who are not employed by the organization. So we're just really highly encouraging all of our applicants to submit plans that promote senior level leaders or managers, or to consider creating a management team that oversees those responsibilities. So in terms of the capacity building piece, this is the fourth component of the grant. And as I mentioned earlier, there are up to $15,000 allocated for staff capacity building needs. And the recipient has up to 2 years post-award to use these funds, of course, pending any continued pandemic issues. And as with the interim leadership plan, we developed a template for you to complete a similar plan here for capacity building. And I will note that while the foundation has no say in what the funds are used for, we are looking to ensure that the funds are used for capacity building needs exclusively identified by staff rather than just being directed by management. So we really want to make sure that you're engaging your staff and understanding directly from them what their capacity building needs and desires are, and that you're building that staff engagement piece into how you design your plan. And these are funds that can be used for things like continuing education, trainings, workshops, even conference fees. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you can really put this plan together. So let's talk a little bit about program eligibility. There are 2 areas of eligibility that applicants need to meet. The first one being individual eligibility for your executive director, and then secondarily that of your organization. So let's look at the executive director requirements first. So we're looking for applicants who are obviously Colorado-based nonprofit executive directors, CEOs, tribal administrators. We're looking for folks who are known as outstanding and respected leaders with a record of community contribution. We're looking for executive directors who've served at least 5 years in a current executive role at the organization. And I do want to note that this is criteria that we've adjusted for this new cycle based on feedback that we've received from the community. This is not a required criteria, it's just one that we're recommending. And part of why we've made this adjustment is that we've just learned that this type of criteria can exclude certain members of the community. And we want to make sure that we don't do that. So we've made that adjustment. And I would say that if any of you or folks who you're listening for today have served fewer than 5 years in your current role, we highly recommend that you talk with our technical assistance team to discuss your specific situation. And we'll hear from that team here in just a minute so you can get familiar with them. We're also looking for applicants who have at least 7+ years experience in an ED role within the nonprofit sector, that you be currently a full-time employee and a resident of Colorado, that you obviously have a commitment to remaining in the position that you're in at the organization that you're in right now for at least 3 years, that you have organizational board approval. We're looking for those sustainable interim leadership and operational plans for the organization. And then finally, we're looking for willingness from those applicants to serve in that executive and residence portion of the experience, and also in any programmatic alumni activities. Let's look at the program eligibility at the organizational level. So applicants obviously need to be located in Colorado and providing services and programming that is focused on bringing health and reach for Coloradans, which is of course the mission of our foundation. We're looking for applicants who are operating as public charities, not private foundations, for example, under IRS Code 501c3. We're looking for evidence of guaranteed maintenance and sustainability of those regular operations that would be happening during the sabbatical period itself. We're looking for demonstrated need for financial assistance during the absence or the sabbatical period, and a demonstrated need for and a commitment to supporting those organizational capacity building opportunities that your staff will generate. And of course, we need to make sure that you would be guaranteeing salary, health, other benefits to the applicant during the nominee's absence. And then we're also looking for organizations who have at least 3 full-time employees staffed at the organization. And why this has got a little star next to it is this is another criteria that we've adjusted for cycle 2 based on some of our learning out of the first cycle. We adjusted this down from 5 to 3 FTE. And one of the things I'll note here is that you can consider part-time employees as a part of how you count your full-time employees. We're also willing to look at how you use volunteer base. So in the application, there are different ways that you can convey to us how you consider the FTE count laddering up. So let's talk just for a minute about the actual grant requirements and what you might expect if you receive one. So in terms of the grant payment and tax implications, we will make a grant payment to this for the sabbatical program, to the recipient organization. So the executive will not receive that grant directly, which is, I'm sure some of you are thinking that could really throw things off from a tax standpoint. So you don't have to worry about that. That grant's going to go to the organization you work for. We do recommend, though, that the grantee and the executive seek professional and individual tax advice prior to applying, just to make sure that, that you understand the implications in general. In terms of expense tracking, so we don't require itemized receipts from the grantee, but we do recommend that expenses be tracked consistent with the programmatic budget line items. And you will find that when you go to take a look at the application and understand all the things that you would need to submit, there is a budget template that you would be completing. And then finally, on expenditures, we require that recipient organizations report on the actual financial expenditures of the grant as compared to the line items in the budget. So let's shift over to technical assistance, otherwise known as TA for the sake of this discussion. And I'll just note that we've established a TA team to support applicants and grantees for this program. This amazing team that we have put together worked for us through the first cycle. They helped us really develop this program even before this first cycle opened. And so they've got a lot of experience under their belts. And I think everyone who works with them will really enjoy just the engagement and being able to tap into their expertise. Using technical assistance for a program like this is an approach that we learned is a really critical aspect of other successful sabbatical programs that exist in the sector. And so that's part of why we stood this up. I will note that we have technical assistance available as of even today. They're working with all of the applicants who are interested in applying for this program. And then they also support the grantees over time. So they're starting now to work with the grantees who have just emerged out of the first cycle. So before I turn this over to Carolyn, I just want to make one more note. If you are a grant recipient for this program eventually, you won't have a traditional program officer like you might if you receive a different type of grant from the foundation. Instead, you would be working directly with the technical assistance team and myself. So Carolyn, I'm going to turn it over to you and Brian to share just a little bit about what that experience might be like.
Thanks so much, Taryn. And I am going to just walk you through the type of support that I can be providing for you. And then Brian will be coming to you to let you know on the financial end what he's able to do as well. When you start looking at the beginning of this journey, if you will, it is thinking about and thinking critically about how you want to complete this application. So that's where I can step in and provide support by being your thought partner to really be able to help you think through your interim leadership plan, to help you think through how you're going to be sure that you're engaging others to develop, your capacity building plan. If needed, to maybe facilitate a meeting if that's necessary, to help people just kind of start organizing themselves around putting together a very strong application. And the other thing is when you start looking at providing some support to you as you, let's say if you are selected, and at this point you're an awardee, then it's helping you think through and putting a finer point to, if you will, to your interim leadership plan, your capacity building plan, but even more importantly, that executive in residence. I think that is such an amazing opportunity to be able to spend a month in the foundation. I call it to kind of take a peek behind the curtain, if you will, and to really gain an understanding of the foundation. But then what is it that you want from that executive in residence program? And what is it that you want to offer to the foundation while you're on that? So that, again, is an area where I can step in and serve as your thought partner during the initial orientation session after you've been accepted as an awardee, to help you really think through, how you want to maximize and best utilize, if you will, that sabbatical program. And then in my past life, I served as an executive director for a nonprofit organization for about 13 years. And that developing your staff and developing your team and that interim leadership program, that interim leader, if you will, may need a thought partner to think through some things that may come up that are totally unexpected. So there to provide that support, if you will, during that interim period while the leader of the organization is gone. Because one thing to keep in mind is that from my perspective, this sabbatical program is an organizational change process. And anytime you have change, it changes the interactions between people. It changes your role slightly, because where you maybe once were, or you had someone who was your deputy ED, now they may be becoming the executive director. So everybody is stepping into a new role perhaps. And how do we provide that support and that serving as a thought partner to help you through that? And then after the executive director has been away for 3 or 4 months, depending on how you structure your sabbatical, I love the way that the organization said it will be a silent return. Because I don't know about you, but if I was out on vacation from my nonprofit for a couple of weeks, when I came back in, my desk was just buried. Even though I had go do some things, it's how do you do that? So it's being able to provide some support to not only the executive director to help them kind of land back into their space gently, but to also help the staff readjust, because now you're changing again because the executive director is kind of back in space. So that's how I can provide support to you during your whole sabbatical journey. Really, as a thought partner, when needed, step in as your coach to help you through those processes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian so that he can share with you what he brings to you in terms of support.
Thank you so much, Carolyn, and hello, everyone. My name is Brian Kellaway. I'm from Nonprofit Finance Fund, and our goal at Nonprofit Finance Fund is to support the work of the sabbatical program and of you all specifically by providing strategic financial management consulting support. I'm also joined by my colleague, Johnny Lambor, on the call today, who will also be working directly with the first cycle of award recipients from this past year, as well as those of you who will be awarded the opportunity to participate in this program next year as well. At NFF, we like to talk about 501c3 as being a tax status, not a business model. And so while we're coming in through the lens of finance, it's not finance for finance's sake. It's with the goal of ensuring that you're able to continue providing impactful programming and mission delivery today, as well as into the future. And so certainly to Carolyn's point, when we're talking about key executive leaders like yourselves stepping away from your organization for a period of time, our goal is to ensure that the financial processes as it pertains to financial communication, financial management, financial reporting, and certainly financial decision-making do not go interrupted in your absence. And so we're available throughout the process, but starting at the pre-sabbatical period, we're happy to add thought partnership and provide support as you're developing budgets as it relates to the application. And certainly to Carolyn's point, as you're beginning to design your interim leadership plan, as well as thinking about staff capacity building strategies, we're happy to offer thoughts as it relates to what types of financial implications and financial considerations you would want to include within those plans. With the capacity building support that's available for your staff, I want to be very deliberate in differentiating what Karen has already pointed out, which is very much a staff-driven and staff-informed capacity building opportunity from what Carolyn and I are talking about as it relates to this technical assistance. The foundation is supporting your access to our teams, and therefore you are not needing to incorporate the time of Carolyn or I into the specific capacity building plan. Our work is available to your teams outside of and separate from those activities that your staff will be identifying as being most critical to supporting their own continued development and the development of your organization. As we move into the sabbatical period, we're certainly available to help during the transitions, and the transition periods here are key. That's transition of you as executive leadership out of the organization, as well as that return to the organization and the challenges that come with that, as Carolyn has already mentioned. We want to make sure those transitions are seamless, that information is being shared readily, and that your team has the tools and resources they need to continue managing the financial needs of the organization in your absence. While you are away from the organization, we'll be checking in with the team regularly to provide thought partnership and coaching, to answer questions, and to help them think about how they take more of the compliance-related activities as it pertains to your financial reporting and translate that more into strategic thinking as it pertains to decision-making, perhaps related to your cash flow position, or your cash position and your cash flow needs, I should say, or as they're continuing to have conversations with your board and needing some additional thought partnership as they're entering into those more strategic conversations. Lastly, what I'll say is that throughout the process, again, with finance, we're very much interested in helping to meet you all where you are at. So we are comfortable working with organizations that have very sophisticated financial systems, processes, teams built up over years of experience. And we're also very comfortable working with those of you who perhaps are everything and anything as it pertains to finance for your organization. So please feel free to follow up with any specific questions. If it's helpful to talk through any of this individually, we're available to have phone conversations between now and when the application is due, and really look forward to continuing to work with all of you. So thank you for the time today.
Thanks so much, Brian. I took a moment to just peek at the chat and just wanted to lift up a few things. There's some really good questions in there that we'll go through. If you joined just a few minutes late, you may not have received this. So I'm just going to ask Carrie to repost these, but we did include a link to an existing FAQ on our website about the sabbatical program itself. So it's just really quick, easy access to that FAQ. We also do have a sample application that you can look at. We really advise that everyone spend some time looking at that. And so I'll ask Carrie to repost that as well. And then pretty much all the information I've shared within this discussion today is available on the website. We're going to update the FAQ based on some of these questions here that have come in today that are really good and I think in specific. So that'll also be updated on the website in the next few days. So I just wanted to lift that up before we continue, and we're almost finished too with the presentation. So we'll get to all of these really good questions that are popping up in the chat here. And thank you, Carrie, for adding those items into the chat. So let's see. Let's talk just for a moment about about whether or not you're an existing grantee or a current applicant. Because we've gotten lots of questions since we really launched this program about how it does intersect with other funding that we offer as a foundation. So I do want to just emphasize this is not a traditional grant making program. It's really focused on supporting organizations across the nonprofit sector. And all that being said, we certainly recognize that you may already be engaged with us as a grantee, or you may have recently applied for a grant. So if you have a grant now, or you did recently apply, all we ask is that you just give your program officer, if you have one assigned to you, just a quick heads up. That's all it is. There's nothing else to do on that front. And I just also want to emphasize that your current grant, if you have them with us, or the application status that you may or may not be aware of at this very moment, neither of those things will affect your chances of receiving funding for this program. And so just a couple other quick facts. Many of these things are just going to be redundant, but I want to make sure everyone hears them. So the application period is open now through Monday, March 15th, 2021. As I mentioned just a moment ago, we do have the application PDF on the website, so take a look at that. And our technical assistance team is ready, willing, and able. So as soon as everyone is ready to start those conversations with them, we really do encourage you to do that. And I'm just going to leave this slide up for just a moment because this does include information, contact information for Carolyn, who is our primary point of contact. And she's going to be either working with you directly or redirecting you to Brian. She may even redirect you to me. I noticed that Mara, you had a question, a great question in the chat about how to deal with feedback that you received about your application from the first cycle. And so let's just go ahead and turn over to some of those questions so we can answer them. And let me just give myself 1 second here so I can pull these up. And Carrie, I think I can just go through the chat itself. You can send them to me if you want, but maybe you did already.
Yeah, I sent them to you, Taryn, but I have them copy and pasted, so I'll just copy and paste them right here in the chat for you.
Awesome, thank you. That would be fantastic. Okay, so let's go through the questions that we have right now, and certainly feel free to continue popping questions that come to mind into the chat. We'll do our best to answer them. So the first question here is about timing of applications. So does applying earlier or later matter? And the reality is it doesn't. As long as you get your application in by close of business on March 15th, 2021, that really is your deadline. We don't start reviewing applications before that date. We have a very rigorous review process built in, but nothing starts until after the deadline. So there's and as you can imagine, we do see lots and lots of applications come in that last week or so before the deadline. So hopefully that answers that question. So executive in residence, there's a question here about any examples of what that might look like. So we actually haven't had one yet because we just completed our first cycle. We have 4 grantees who are going to be enjoying sabbaticals in 2021, and we're just starting to talk with each of them. I would say more in just a kind of a high level brainstorm kind of mode about what that executive in residence experience could look like. But we've thought a little bit as a staff too about what someone might be interested in. And so based on some of the conversations, I'll just share ideas for how I can imagine that those 4 weeks might take shape. We've definitely heard from applicants that they're interested in spending time with our CEO, Karen. For those of you who don't know Karen, she has an incredibly significant background in leadership. She spent 16 years at the Center for Creative Leadership, and part of why this program is being put into place again is her vision. She's extremely passionate about coaching other executive directors and learning from those of you who really are her peers in the sector. And so I think there's great opportunities to spend time directly with her as a CEO. She's talked with some folks already about, how to more effectively manage your boards or your trustees. I think that that's something that's come up quite a bit in some of the early conversations and that we heard from the first applicant cycle. There's also been a lot of interest in just understanding philanthropy and sort of getting behind the curtain of the mystery of the work that we do in this field. And so I think there could be a lot of great opportunities to get behind the curtain, not just spending time with us in the office in Denver. Hopefully, we hope that that will be the case since we're still working virtually. But we also think there could be a really great opportunity for, the executive to, come in and attend, different strategy meetings and understand how we develop and design strategy. I think there are lots of opportunities to understand how we really do apply our cornerstones as an organization focused on health equity and achieving racial justice. I've heard from some interested applicants about the idea of spending time with specific departments. We've had some folks who wanted to sit down with our evaluation and learning team, for example, and understand how we think about evaluation and learning. You know, how do you design a theory of change? How do you apply a logic model to work? And so there really are some like pretty inside the house opportunities for that type of thing. If we do have staff out traveling across the, state, we think there are opportunities for you to accompany them possibly. Our program officers, many folks on our policy team, communications team, often are out across the state in communities, meeting with leaders, meeting with nonprofits, seeing how work is taking shape on the ground. We also host a lot of events. We convene Coloradans all over the state. And so right now I'm working with a couple of the grantees to consider how the timing of their executive in residence might actually time up really well with some of our bigger events across the state. And so they might want to get a behind the scenes peek into how we design events. So I hope that's helpful. Feel free to pop more questions into the chat if you have something specific you're wondering about. The next question is focused on programmatic alumni activities, which is a great question. And we actually don't have an alumni cohort firmly established yet, since we just have our existing 4 grantees, but I will share a little bit about the thinking behind having an alumni cohort. We really think that, and we've seen other sabbatical programs do this successfully, we think there are lots of opportunities for the alumni to just keep informing how the program takes shape over time. So there could be opportunities if you are chosen and you take a sabbatical and you learn a lot from that experience that you want to, come back and help inform. You might have an opportunity to actually advise future sabbatical recipients. We really just think of it as a place to kind of come together as thought partners to, support each other, to continue thinking about what the sector needs at the executive director level. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities for how the alumni activities might take shape. Let me just see, I think there's another question here about that. So outlining examples of this. Yeah, and one other thing I'll just say, since we don't have like a firm outline for the alumni program yet, I will say that we will make sure it's extremely flexible for everyone who participates in it. There's no strict guideline around it. We certainly recognize that executive directors are busy enough as it comes. And so we'll try to be really flexible about what that ends up looking like. So let's see, the next question is for technical assistance. Would it be okay to call them to discuss the feedback we got from our last application? So I know this came from Mara, I saw this. And I would say the answer to that is yes. Mara, I'm not sure if you had a chance to talk with Karen. I can't see your face on my screen right now, but you did, okay, good. So what I would say, Mara, is that, if you want to take the feedback that you received from Karen and then take that into a conversation with Carolyn or Brian, if it's helpful to bring me in, if we need to revisit something with Karen, I just want you to know that we can do all of those things. And Carolyn, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think you covered it quite well. So what would be helpful for me if we had a conversation would to bring in with you the conversation that you had with Karen and those questions around it, so I can then best support you knowing kind of what you've received so far.
Great. And this is actually a great moment for me to share a little bit about what you might expect from the application experience and the review experience. We learned a lot about what we think works about the internal review that we undergo at the foundation. We do have an internal review team who's dedicated to this program. We spend lots and lots of time together during the review period, and it's extremely rigorous. One of the things that we know is really important, and we've heard just time and time again, is feedback on your application. So, if you don't make it into the final round, if you don't end up receiving a grant, we're really committed to making sure that you get feedback that's useful and does help you, tweak a future application. More than anything, just to make sure that you get feedback that is, has some utility behind it, and it's not just a straight sort of no, sorry, not going to happen this time. So that's something that we're really dedicated to. I'm going to turn to the next question, which is, will we need to be specific on the timing in the application? about, I'm assuming this is about the actual, like when the sabbatical would be taken. And I would say that most people who apply do put some specificity behind dates or time ranges for when they feel like they want to take the sabbatical. You won't necessarily be, you won't have to stick to that, I would say, outside of the 18-month period. The 18-month period is obviously something that is a guideline that we want to keep in place, but within that 18-month period, we want you to have the flexibility to take that sabbatical during a time that works for you. Part of why it's been really helpful for us to get a general time range is it's helpful for us to understand if there's any trends in terms of when people do want to be taking sabbaticals. And we certainly saw in the first cycle that it's pretty clear most applicants want to be able to take some time off during summer months, at least those summer months in the Northern Hemisphere. And so we're actually going to be adjusting our third cycle to launch this coming August. So the applicants have a better window of time to be taking the sabbatical during summer months. So I hope that's helpful. Let's see, I see another question. Okay, does a program that focuses on homelessness, addiction recovery qualify as one that supports health and health equity? So this is a great question. And again, another reason why I really encourage folks to look at the application itself, because you know, we do consider all those things that you just put in the chat as aspects of whether or not you can be healthy. We take a very broad view of health at the foundation, and I think if you're not familiar with our work, you know, you should take a look at our 4 primary focus areas. We have 10 priorities that sit underneath that, but we do not just consider health to be about healthcare. We really have a holistic view of health, so it does look at ideas around affordable housing, access to fresh and healthy and affordable food, for example. And I think that it would be more than fair to say that the program that you're referencing, I think this is from Millie, would probably likely fit. There are some questions in the application that allow you to talk a little bit about how your programming does align and align with our mission, but also our cornerstones. So there's some questions in there about how you think about health equity, what it means to you, because we know that inequity is an extremely personal, in many ways, experience. And so there's an opportunity to talk about how that sort of shows up in the work that you do and how you think about it as a leader. And there's also some different opportunities in those questions to talk about the communities that you serve. We are focused as a foundation on serving communities who are living on low income for a variety of reasons and who have historically been living without power and privilege. And so as you look at that application and you know, talk with our technical assistance team about how your work might align, there's some really great opportunities for you to detail that out to us. So let's see, I think we're almost at time. We have just a few minutes left. I think I got all the questions. Does anyone have anything else burning at the top of your mind that you would like to know right now? Carrie, did I miss anything?
Yeah, we received one new question in, Taryn, and it says,
okay.
Would a candidate who has been in the ED role for 2.5 years, but prior to that was the associate director and has worked for the organization at leadership level for over 18 years qualify?
That's a complicated one. I think that, so this program does target executive directors. And I would say that, you know, part of the reason why we relaxed the requirement around number of years is because of exactly this type of situation. I would really encourage you to talk directly with Carolyn, and I'll invite her to comment on this too. Just to really look at kind of like the overall tenure of your executive director role and how that's taken shape over time. Because we've recognized that this isn't just a cookie cutter kind of criteria that everyone fits into. And I think the best thing to do is to talk with us a little bit more about, you know, how your role has taken shape over time. And then then figure out how it may be best for you to consider that as you think about applying. Carolyn, did you want to add to that?
I think you covered it because it is kind of taking it and delving a little bit deeper into it to see what really is kind of going on there. What does that leadership look like? So I think it requires some more conversation and discussion and thinking collaboratively on it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, good. It looks like Larry has emailed you already. All right. Well, if there's nothing else that folks are wondering about, I'm happy to wrap us up a couple minutes early, give you a few minutes of time back. And if anyone has questions, I think hopefully everyone has everything that they might possibly need to get in touch with any of us. I would say that if for any reason you aren't able to get down this information, you can always go to our website at coloradohealth.org, search for the sabbatical program. You'll find all the contact information that you need. And yeah, we just really look forward to seeing all of your applications. And thank you so much for all the amazing work that you all are doing and leading across the state. Honestly, it's just outstanding. It's just amazing to have outstanding leaders like you. So thank you so much for everything that you're all doing. And everyone take care and be well.
Thank you.